Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We're a little shorthanded here today. Senator Quarterman is not here today, and Senator Zucker, I think, is doing a bill on another committee. So he will be catching up with us shortly. And I think a couple of us have bills that we're going to run out and do and come back. So it's just that time of year. So bear with us, please. The schedule this afternoon, we're going to start with the Department of General Services, then we'll do the Department of Labor, and then we'll do Msde Headquarters. And we'll start with Patrick Frank, our budget analyst.
Let's see, we'll start on the first page of the analysis, and what that is our bar chart that shows spending over the 3 years. 21 is the year that was, 22 is the year we are in now, and 23 is for the budget bill. As you can see from those striped lines, the budget was especially large during the pandemic, and that's federal funds for the procurement office for all the extra procurements that they had to do for the pandemic. We'll go to some MFR indicators on page 4, exhibit number 1. These are indicators for procurement activity, and I think the interesting ones are on the right-hand side is the percentages, and what you want to do is get your large procurements done within 90 days, and that's generally happening. And also, you want multiple bids, especially for the state procurements, and so that's generally happening as well. MBE performance, as in past years, we have a 29% goal, but it's very difficult to achieve, and we have been underachieving on this. Another activity for that the department does is that obviously with all the buildings that it has, it tries to manage energy as efficiently as possible, and it's been doing a number of things. And on page 7, there's some examples of some of the things they're doing. And one of the issues is there's not a lot of sub-meters in buildings in some places. I think this whole complex used to have just 1 meter to it, and all these buildings here in Annapolis. So they're doing that. They're also doing some energy audits and recommissioning, or retro-commissioning, I should say, some buildings to get them back to the efficiencies that they had before. Also, more efficient lighting has been added. So there is some activity there to try to improve the efficiencies of energy usage. This agency has quite a few deficiencies. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'll just point out a few of them that I think are important. First of all, the $2.9 million, that's maintenance. That's consistent with what the Spending Affordability Committee asked them to do, to put more maintenance money in, and this increases the amount to $10 million in 2022, and it stays there at 2023. There's also some landscaping in Annapolis and Crownsville. There's a lot of fuel dispensing stations, and they haven't been looked at in 10 years. So there's some money to audit them and to make sure that they're working well. Finally, the last one I want to point out is, or actually 2 more things I should point out. The janitorial services contracts are increasing, and that's anticipation of higher labor costs. And also, there is $300,000 for a training program to address high vacancies and things like that. They're going to model this off of a program that the State Highway Administration did. This actually, too, is consistent with the Spending Affordability Committee, which said to state agencies in general that the vacancies are very high. The state is struggling to keep employees, and so agencies should come up with some ideas to try to help with their turnover, and this is an idea that DGS is implementing. And so our recommendation with respect to this is that one of their goals for the MFR is to provide efficient services and stuff like that. We think that, and that should include training, and so we're recommending that their MFR goals are more explicit about this, and that they come up with some measures to see how effective this is working. Now, if you look at agency spending for the agency, this first chart shows it by the various agencies. About 45% is facilities operations and maintenance. That's the buildings management, facility planning. That's the construction management, and that also includes the $10 million for the facility maintenance program. Security is next, and then state procurement. And so it's a pretty diverse organization. If you break it down by objects, what you can see is 48% of the budget is salaries and wages. So basically, one way to look at DGS is it's 2 things. It's personnel and everything else. And so the point here is that I think personnel is a really important part of their budget, and it's good that they need to emphasize that as they put their budget together. I'm going to skip the where it goes chart. The big cost you already saw. It has to do with the procurement funding. There are some new positions, 5 in total. 3 of them are for the grants program in the enterprise business office, and there's also an accountant and an assistant attorney general. Some positions have been moving across the different agencies. As you can see from this chart, the real estate has 5 new positions, or 5 more than in the current budget, and some of those are from other agencies and stuff like that. A lot of this is just because of the state center move. They're going to need more staffing. Also, business enterprise, which has the grants program, also has some additional positions, and as you can see here. This is an agency that has always had high vacancy rates, and from this chart, it's been above 8% since 2017. It goes up to 11.7% now. I mean, and also what I did a few years ago, my first year that I came here, I was curious about the vacancies and what the salaries were compared to some other areas. And so what I did is in 2017, I did a survey to repeat it in 2020 and again in this January. And we took the most common position in each of the different offices that that DGS has and compared them to positions in Baltimore City, Cecil County, Washington County, and I believe Montgomery County as well. And just to see, and as you can see from those highlighted places, where there's commonality, in most cases, DGS has the lowest salary of all of them. In a few places, DGS, in the procurement and in the police officer, they are second and third lowest. So they're a little better there. And what's interesting too about this is that those are the 2 areas, because there was procurement reform, and part of procurement reform was to increase salaries. And the others, the police have done probably as better than most employees have in the state in recent years as far as salaries actions. So I guess part of the point of this chart too is if the state does make an effort to increase salaries, it does tend to do a little bit better. Another thing I looked at is what the average step is of the different employees. And the step is the grade, and I think they're getting rid of base now, so it goes from 1 to, I think, 21 or 22. And if you do your job well and they offer the increments, then you move up a step each year. Now, we haven't had steps actually in the last 5 years. So basically what this says is these average steps that's the step at which a person was hired at. And so the concerns with this is if you don't give steps for a long time, you're going to have the salary compression issue. For example, on average, people hired in 2018 are on a step 9. Well, people hired over last year are on a step 10. So there's a good chance that there are some people, of those, the almost 40 from 2018 and the 45 from last year, in which 2 people doing the same job, the person that was hired last year has a higher salary than a person who has been working for 4 years. And when I brought this up to our management in a meeting, the first thing everybody did was say, hey guys, I have an example of that too. I have an example, and then it was basically we all went around the room and everybody told their example of how, and so I guess the point I'm trying to make with this is that if you don't give these step increases, then you're going to have this kind of a compression, because the step increase recognizes that an employee that's worked a year has learned something, gotten a little better, and they get a little bit of a bump then. And a year later, they get another bump. And if you're not giving the step increases, you're not giving the bumps. And so you have some of these anomalies. So it's probably more of a DBM personnel issue, and I believe we're raising it there. But this is a good example of how this works. All right, now we can go to the first issue. Really is the maintenance program, and I'll just skip over some of these things in the interest of time, because I know it's a long day today. What I have here is an indicator for facility maintenance, and the interesting one I think is the line here. And what the line does is it compares the unscheduled work orders to the scheduled work orders, basically. The idea being that if this goes up, that means you had an unusually high number of unscheduled work orders, which is probably not so good. That means stuff breaks and things like that. And so you want to keep this as low as possible. In 2020, I mean, the issue was that just the scheduled preventative maintenance orders were a lot less than they were in other years. So that's kind of an anomalous year. And so I thought that was an interesting MFR indicator that the department came up with, and so this is a good thing to watch. And as more of this maintenance happens, as more money is put into maintenance, we should see that decline and stay low. Okay. Another issue, I guess, concern we have about the backlog. Here's an exhibit that shows the backlog. As you can see, over recent years, it has increased. And one of the reasons we think it's increased is because there's a new billing assessment unit that was started in 2020. And so I think what happened here is that this unit, instead of having agencies just send in their problems and say, hey, this is where we're having problems, the DGS now goes in and checks it out themselves. And I don't think so much we have more maintenance needs, it's just that we're more aware of what the needs are. And the other issue we have is, this is more of it's related to the capital discussion too, that there's $75 million in the dedicated purpose account to deal with these maintenance things, and that's 3 times as much. They're going to have 3 times as much next year as I've had in any other year. And so our concern is that the staffing it may not be there for the department to manage all this work. And so what we've got some language that we're recommending in which we take $500,000 from other sources and tell the agencies and fence that off so they can only use that for maintenance. And now they can either hire more employees or maybe there's contracts they can use to do the work. We're pretty agnostic as to how they actually do it, but we think that there should be resources available for this. Third issue that I have has to do with emergency procurements. And I went through last year through all of the Board of Public Works agenda items, and I found that there were 54 emergency procurements. And these are the ones that are not related to COVID. These are just, a lot of them are like out-of-state placements for youth and stuff like that. And what I was a little bit surprised to find was of those 54, 6 of them actually were sent to the Board of Public Works in the 45 days as required by state law. And so that's 1 out of every 9 was on time to the board, and the rest were not. Now, these are things that although the state procurement agencies and DGS, this is something that is delegated to the agencies. So the DGS is not directly responsible for this, but since DGS does have the state procurement agency in it that is ultimately responsible for procurement, what we're suggesting is that you have to adopt some narrative to look at this issue and have DGS get back to us on why it is and what can be done about it. A second issue that we have with respect to DGS and the procurement office is, and this is once again something that has been delegated to the agencies, the small procurements. There was this one procurement that started at the Office of the Public Defender for $19,800. It eventually went to over $1.1 million, of which $960,000 was actually spent. Now, this should have been done as a procurement, should have been bid, instead of just a quick phone call for $20,000 that balloons to $1 million. So once again, this is an agency issue, but since the State Procurement Office is in DGS, we've asked them to respond to see what are they going to do with that. And the short answer is they're going to beef up their training, and part of the purpose of procurement reform was to provide improved training. And so I'll give them the opportunity to talk about the training that they have. Let's see. Next issue has to do with State Center. As many of you know, the big office building is not, the agencies are moving out of it. Here's the schedule for that, for what the move is, and what we've asked is to tie up some money and have them give us a report on the status of State Center. And the final issue that I have has to do with the grants office, and these are the grants for the capital budget grants, or mostly of them. There's a lot of them are started in the bill itself from the administration, but also a lot of them are from legislators. There are some concerns have been raised about this, and there was a joint chairman's report done this last interim, and it had some recommendations and made some observations. One of the interesting things, and I think these are actually quite related to one another, one of the observations is that they probably need a good web-based online system which would make their operations more efficient. Another interesting thing is that it was said that a lot of times the grantees struggle to get timely information. When there's relevant changes or relevant things happening, they don't get notified as quickly. And it seems to me these things are linked together in the sense that if there was a good system, the grantees could just go on there and find out for themselves very quickly. And I think that would solve a lot of issues. And so there is some money for this in the budget to build this new IT system. And pretty much that's my presentation. Like I said, there's the recommendations that I have, the money for state center, money for the maintenance program. We've also got some narrative about the emergency procurements, and finally the MFR goals about employee retention. And the rest of the analysis is about the IT projects and the standard appendices. And with that, I'll conclude my remarks and take questions.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Frank, for that thoughtful analysis. Is there any questions for Mr. Frank? Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. And this might be for the department, but I just couldn't help but notice on number 5, and I know our chair knows this as capital budget chair, we kind of experienced the same delay with LBIs and the grant recipients. It seems to me, since the 4 years I've been doing this, a lot longer delay in actually expediting and getting that money out for our LBIs. Is it related to what you observed in number 5?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And there was some, the JCR that they prepared showed some data. And there's been more money in recent years, more projects, more workload, and the staff clearly struggle. I don't throw them under the bus or anything, but that's a lot of work that they're doing, and there were some struggles there in this. And I think the IT system is critical, I think, for them to do it right.
And has staffing of this part of the department gone up with the increase of money awarded, or?
There are 3 new positions this
Okay.
year, yes. They're addressing those positions as well.
In fiscal 23?
23, yes.
Okay, so they have not yet been,
Right.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Just so the public knows, and I know the thousands of people's watching us live right now, members are coming in and out because of bill hearings. So I am not Chair King. I don't play her on TV either. Well, I do in this hearing, but that's just, people are going to be coming in and out, so that's why. But with that, Mr. Secretary, why don't you come up with your team, Secretary Churchill? And I know you have a panel with you, so if you wouldn't mind coming to the witness desk table and just introducing your team, and then if you could respond to Mr. Frank's excellent analysis. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. I think twice in 1 week, right?
Yeah, what a pleasure, what a pleasure. And actually, it's a pleasure to be here in person as well. So, good afternoon, Chairman Zucker, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ellington Churchill, Secretary for the Maryland Department of General Services. With me today, and because General Services has 6 very unique divisions, but sitting here at the table with me today, Nelson Reichert, Deputy Secretary for the department. He's to my right. To his right is Deidre Bell, the Director of Grants. To my left is Louis Luna, Assistant Secretary for the Office of Facilities Management. And to his left is Michael Zimmerman, the new Chief Procurement Officer for the state. We also have other representation in the back, should there be a question that may arise. I do want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today regarding our operating budget. And I too want to thank Mr. Frank, thank Patrick, for his analysis of our FY23 operating budget request. We appreciate Patrick's hard work and understanding of our complex agency. General Services is known for its expertise in real estate, construction, procurement, the management and securing of state facilities throughout the state. In addition, we purchase all electricity used in state operations and oversee the state energy database, the largest and most robust of its kind, which helps all state agencies manage their utility cost and energy usage. An excellent example of our work can be seen with the newly completed systemic renovation of the Atman Glazer building in Annapolis, which highlights the expertise and cooperation of 4 of our divisions: design, construction, and energy, facilities management, state procurement, and the Maryland Capitol Police. And I'd like to take a moment to further highlight DGS's efforts over the past year. The Office of Energy and Sustainability continues to support the administration's goals to reduce energy use, cost, and environmental impact of state facilities. Among the completed projects, an additional 2 million square feet of state-owned buildings have undergone energy audits. More than 8,000 inefficient light fixtures in Annapolis, on the Annapolis campus, have been replaced with state-of-the-art efficient LED fixtures, providing a savings to the state of nearly $200,000 in annual energy cost. The office also launched a new electric vehicle infrastructure program to ensure that adequate charging equipment is available to state agencies to support an increasingly electrified fleet. The Office of Design, Construction, and Energy has awarded over $60 million in new projects and completed more than $50 million ongoing capital projects. And we have a growing backlog of 130 projects in design with a construction value of more than $755 million. And recent projects managed by the division include the completion of the new major General Linda L. Singh Readiness Center in Carroll County, the expansion of the Studio A for the Maryland Public Television headquarters in Baltimore County, and the completion of the new Salisbury Animal Health Laboratory in Wycomico County. The Office of State Procurement continues to implement processes to improve for improvements that reduce administrative complexity, increase transparency, add functional accountability, and increase transactional, operational, and commercial efficiency. The office is providing local business accessibility, improved communication, and where appropriate, expand cooperation with other states. Mr. Chair, the department works diligently and proudly every day to maximize the stewardship of Maryland resources and to allow state government to function efficiently and in a safe and secure environment. You have our testimony, but now turning to the analysis provided by Mr. Frank, the department has been asked to address 4 budget recommended actions. On page 5 in our response, DGS responds in the following. DGS concurs with item 3 and item 4 of the 4 actions. Concerning item 1, DGS respectfully disagrees with the recommended restriction of funds, as the agency will need those funds to hire as many vacant positions as possible in FY23. DGS will work to ensure that all resources are aligned to support the facility renewal program as needed and as effectively demonstrated in the past. Concerning item 2, DGS concurs with the adoption of the committee narrative to require the department to report on the status of State Center, but we respectfully disagree with the language restricting funds pending the receipt of the report. If I may note for the committee, General Services already drafts and transmits more than 40 mandated and/or JCR reports annually. And we're proud to say DGS has always completed all required reports in a timely manner. I will now turn to the discussion points as noted in Mr. Frank's analysis. The department has been asked to be prepared to brief the committee on 4 topics. They include the Office of Facilities Management strategies to maximize the implementation of the department's enhanced e-main system, and the Office of Facilities Maintenance approach to collecting data. The Office of State Procurement's efforts to train agencies to minimize the likelihood that agencies circumvent procurement laws, as well as the Grants Office efforts to improve CGL implementation. And Mr. Chair, the committee does have our testimony, and I'm always sensitive to the committee's time. It's been mentioned earlier. We are prepared to provide a fuller brief pending your discretion on any or all of those topics. And in addition, we're able to brief on the 3 topics in terms of State Center and emergency procurement as well. Would you like us to proceed with a fuller brief?
I don't know if that's necessary. I mean, if there's anything else for that you just want to summarize that you think would be important for the subcommittee, other than that, we do have your written response, and we appreciate it.
All right. I will just ask because, and we are always available to answer questions, but the Office of Facilities Management was noted about the backlog. We're very proud of what we have been able to do, and Mr. Frank is correct in terms of the inspection unit and looking for more items to be able to fix that goes hand in hand with this system that will be able to manage all of that. We're all right with it.
For item 1, you had mentioned that you didn't want the money restricted because you're going to use it for pins, and I think right now you have a 10% vacancy rate. So how many pins would you use, how many pins would you be able to fill with the money that we'd be restricting?
Well, it really depends on the salary, Chairman Zucker. We have some of the lowest level salaries and some of the highest level salaries, and that I could certainly come back with an answer to the committee as to how many positions that would affect.
I think that would be helpful, especially if, that would be helpful. Senator Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A quick comment. I believe the Chair of Budget and Tax is putting together several work groups, one of which will be on procurement, so perhaps that would be appropriate for, if you would like, for you to talk about the emergency procurement issues there. I do have 2 quick questions, Mr. Chair. On the Crownsville note in the analysis, while not in my district, is very important to my county. And I know the governor has expressed wanting to divest of Crownsville to Anne Arundel County, but you have your maintenance, which has always been astonishingly high. That's not a judgment, it's just it's a large property. But you're still budgeting for that maintenance in fiscal '23. What is the plan or timeline for divesting to the county of the Crownsville property?
Well, of course, the maintenance of the Crownsville property does remain in the Maryland Department of Health. It's not in General Services, with General Services oversight. So Deputy Secretary Riker has been working on the process, and he can give you a little more information on the topic.
Senator, yes, Nelson Riker, Deputy Secretary. We've been meeting with the county on a pretty regular basis to outline the issues that have to be addressed. We've got multiple occupancies there. There's some common utilities that have to be dealt with. So we're trying to work through those. Hopefully, through the summer, we'll be closer to actually, beginning the transfer process.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of hurdles to go through, and, there's a bunch of towers out there that have to be dealt with, whether they want to continue to lease or take over the property, and some of the tenants as well, and so forth. So we're working through those issues with the county on a pretty regularly basis.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you.
Certainly.
And then just my second, and it's a question, but just on the LBI issue, and I know that you know this, but so many of the LBI recipients coming from the General Assembly are very small nonprofits who do not have a tremendous amount of margin in terms of floating the front costs for projects for very long. And I've had a number in my own district who have almost had to go and get bridge loans while waiting for the DGS response. I know that you were understaffed in that department, and the budget includes more staffing for it, but if you could please look at that moving forward, because these are very small nonprofits in large part.
Senator Alford, we recognize that that the cash flow means everything to smaller organizations. Just of note, just for reference, 5 years ago, this unit only had 2 people. And so we have continued to add additional staff and add what I call belts and suspenders around the process to help the cash flow move through. Right now, all our grant administrators on average handle anywhere from 400 to 600 cases. And so we have put new processes in place to help smooth out the process, make sure that grantees are informed of where they are, and we're making every attempt to make sure that we're processing invoices in a timely manner so that they can get the cash in their hands to pay their contract.
Thank you very much. And just last note, congratulations again on the old post office. You were so kind to give me a tour, and it's beautiful. And to the committee, if you have a couple minutes to walk over there, it's a magnificent testament to the work that DGS produces. So thank you.
We appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Ms. Secretary, just one other question. So in previous years, I think it was in 2020, I know Mr. Frank did an excellent analysis of sort of where everything was with, there it is, the MB participation. I was wondering if, you don't have to do it now, but if you could just, if it's okay with the chair, just submit to the the subcommittee sort of where we are meeting our MBE goals across the agencies, because I think at that time, 60% of them weren't meeting their MBE goals. So it'd be good to just get a sense, Madam Chair, I think, of sort of where we are now. If that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Yes, through our Chief Procurement Officer, we'll put together that information and forward it to the committee.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Department of Labor. Emily Haskell will be our budget analyst. And we have a whole list of representatives. No hurry, no hurry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, my name is Emily Haskell, and I'll be presenting the budget analysis for the Maryland Department of Labor. As you can see in the budget summary on page 1, Labor's budget totals about $562 million in fiscal 2023, and that's a decrease of more than $980 million compared to the current year, mostly due to $1 billion in federal funds from the American Rescue Plan that were used in fiscal 2022 to replenish the Unemployment Insurance, or UI, Trust Fund. Other than funding related to UI, Labor's budget increases by $17 million, mostly because of increases in video lottery terminal funds for horse racing and local impact grants. And there's a $2.3 million increase in general funds for the Earn Workforce Program, as well as apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. And those increases are offset by a decrease of nearly $5 million in general funds because of a proposed one-time deficiency in fiscal 2022 to pay down the department's balance of unrecoverable federal fund revenues. The first issue in the allowance, or in the analysis, is relates to the COVID-19 relief funding for workforce development. I'm going to focus on the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA programs, as well as American Rescue Plan funds that the state has allocated to supplement WIOA funding for local jurisdictions. The Relief Act provided $7 million to local workforce areas in fiscal 2021, and then the fiscal 2022 and 2023 budgets each include $37.5 million. So that's a total of $82 million in ARPA funds for workforce programs. And for comparison, Labor's fiscal 2023 allowance includes $54 million for regular WIOA program funding. There are 3 main WIOA programs for different populations: adult, youth, and dislocated worker. 86% of the funds for these programs are distributed to Maryland's 13 local workforce areas, while 14% is retained by Labor for statewide activities, including program administration and oversight, as well as pilot programs. And Exhibit 4 shows how locals spend their portion of the funds, with nearly half spent on staff costs and 18% funding training activities. Next, Exhibit 5 shows some data on the major performance measures for the WIOA program. And along the top of the chart, you can see the statewide performance on these measures. Local workforce areas are aiming to meet locally adjusted standards. And for reference, those standards are included in the appendices. For each subprogram, the performance indicators include employment rates after the second and fourth quarters following the program, median earnings, and the percent of participants obtaining a credential or obtaining measurable skill gains. Maryland meets the statewide standard overall for each of the measures, although local workforce areas are not consistently meeting the locally adjusted standards, especially you can see in credential attainment. Exhibit 6 shows how many of the standards each local area is meeting or failing. Labor provides technical assistance to local areas that are failing or close to failing a performance measure, and takes further corrective actions if a measure is failed for 3 consecutive years. Exhibit 7 shows the first couple rounds of American Rescue Plan funds, with the regular fiscal 2022 funding shown for comparison. The $37.5 million in fiscal 2022 more than doubled the amount available to local areas. As you can see, unlike the regular funding, no funds were retained for statewide activities. Each local area submitted plans to the department detailing how they would use the Relief Act funds and the first round of $37.5 million. There are fewer restrictions on how ARPA funds can be used compared to regular WIOA program funding. So in addition to training, job search assistance, and supportive services, many local areas used Relief Act funds for one-time investments such as mobile career centers. For the first tranche of the $37.5 million, many of the plans submitted didn't have a lot of detail, often copying language from the State Fiscal Recovery Fund guidance, noting that funding would support training and services for workers in industries impacted by the pandemic. A few local areas provided more specific program plans, including Baltimore City's plans to fund seats in certain training programs and apprenticeships. Montgomery County planned to fund out-of-school youth programming as well as a reentry program, training and programs that fall outside the regular WIOA eligibility, and business incentives for hiring. Carroll County plans to use funding to address the digital divide and also provide rapid training for in-demand occupations such as welding, among other uses. As I mentioned, Labor did not retain any of the funds from the $37.5 million in fiscal 2022 as a set-aside for administration and oversight, and the department has been unable to monitor the use of these funds beyond a limited review of the initial plans. While the flexibility for using the ARPA funds is certainly an opportunity, it also makes oversight particularly important. So DLS recommends adding language to restrict 10% of the fiscal 2023 funding to be retained by the department to provide oversight and performance evaluation. The remaining 90% of funding would still be distributed to local areas by the usual formula. The second issue in the analysis relates to the unemployment insurance program. As you're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic led to historic UI claims, as well as several new federal programs that expanded eligibility, extended the duration of benefits, and provided supplemental weekly benefits. Exhibit 8 shows the continued claims volume for all programs from January 2020 to January 2022, with the regular UI claims shown by the red line. You can see regular claims have returned to a level consistent with before the pandemic, and the federal programs terminated this past September. However, you can see in Exhibit 9 that despite the claims volume going back down, the department is still struggling to get back to meeting the established timeliness standard of paying 87% of all initial claims within 3 weeks, achieving just 28% in December. DLS has asked the department to comment on the current status of pending claims and when they expect to once again start meeting that standard for timeliness now that claims volume has come down. This next exhibit, Exhibit 10, shows details on several contracts the department has entered into to manage the increased claims during the pandemic, which total about $330 million. Most of the costs for these contracts are not accurately reflected in the budget. For example, the contract with Accenture, the fiscal 2022 appropriation, currently has less than $8 million allocated for the contract, but the department has already expended more than 10 times that as of this month. Costs for fiscal 2023 also are likely to far exceed what's budgeted in the allowance. At the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned the $1 billion in American Rescue Plan funds for replenishing the UI Trust Fund in fiscal 2022. Due to the high claims volume, the trust fund was depleted during the pandemic, and the department borrowed almost $70 million from the federal government to pay claims. Those funds were paid back interest-free last fall. Of the $1 billion committed to replenish the fund, only $830 million was ultimately needed to get the trust fund back to its pre-pandemic level of $1.25 billion. So the remaining $170 million is expected to be canceled in the closeout process and made available for other uses. Finally, this page shows the recommended language restricting funds for oversight of the American Rescue Plan workforce development funding. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. No questions? Okay. Emily, good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
As always. Okay, we have the Honorable Tiffany P. Robinson, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor. Do you want to bring up your panel and introduce them, please? You've had an exciting year.
Might be the understatement of the year. Madam Chair, good afternoon, Chair King and members of the subcommittee. My name is Tiffany Robinson. I'm Secretary at the Maryland Department of Labor, and I have with me at the table the department's Deputy Secretary, Dave Mcglone. We do have an entire leadership team from the department behind me. Does everyone want to wave and raise their hands? There are more of my leadership team than chairs available, so if it's okay, if you have questions for them, I would be happy to call them up. As you know, the department includes the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning, Unemployment Insurance, Labor and Industry, the Office of Financial Regulation, Occupational and Professional Licensing, and of course, the Maryland Racing Commission. I would love to spend hours telling you about the record number of apprentices and occupational and professional licensees and all the good work that we've done, paying $14.5 billion in benefits over the past year and a half. But in the interest of time, I will focus on the analysis and respond to your questions. I would like to thank our analyst, Emily Haskell. You always provide a very thorough analysis of our budget. It makes my job a little bit easier when we come here today, so we do appreciate that. One of the things you asked us to comment on was the status of pending unemployment insurance claims and the timeliness numbers in the USDOL reports. So I will start by just letting you know that of the millions of claims that we received during this unprecedented situation with the pandemic, over 99% of those that were non-fraudulent have been processed. We're really proud of that. We have cleared nearly all of our backlog, and we're now just dealing with the final batch of very complex claims that require extensive mitigation. Because of these efforts to clear this backlog, some of the timeliness data will remain skewed for another month or so, and that's because of how the data is reported to USDOL. I wanted to make sure that the subcommittee is aware that the USDOL charts that were presented and show our timeliness with when paying claims within 21 days do not include any of the federal pandemic programs, not the PUA claims that were paid out during the pandemic. Those claims constituted 2/3 of our claimants. And our data shows a much faster timeliness payment, paying approximately 80 to 90% of those claims within the 21-day timeframe. We are working very closely with our counterparts and our partners at USDOL to try and get some of our previous data corrected and provide a more accurate reflection of the timeliness of those payments. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the continued onslaught of sophisticated fraud that we face in the unemployment insurance system. It has been a significant, consistent, and ever-changing challenge since the beginning of the pandemic. To date, our fraud prevention team has flagged nearly 1.8 million claimants, which constitutes 2.3 million total claims, because some claimants have more than one fraudulent claim in the system, as fraudulent. We continue to work really hard and help all the honest Marylanders impacted by this pandemic receive their benefits. The scourge of fraud is unfortunately a modern reality that we and our partners in law enforcement work to stay ahead of every single day. You may have seen just last week, we issued a press release with state police showing customers and Marylanders how to avoid fraudulent text scams and avoid fraudulent web pages being posted in our state and across the nation, for that matter. So I'll move on to the recommendation that we restrict 10% of the ARPA funding for the workforce development funding that came to us last year for oversight of those programs. And I will say enthusiastically that we concur and agree with that recommendation. The current structure with no funding set aside for oversight is not typical of how we administer grants to local areas. And I can tell you that we have been working informally with all the local workforce area directors over the past weeks and months. Of course, we did provide money to them up front, and it makes it a lot harder because when we don't have that funding set aside that is eligible for us to complete the oversight and help them with the hundreds of state and federal reports that are required when federal money comes along with a lot of strings, it makes it harder for us to assist them. As we are accustomed to doing. So this money will help us do that going forward. And my understanding is just simple budget language added into the budget this year would ensure that appropriate oversight from our department to all the local workforce areas for that very large amount of workforce development money, one-time money that's never existed in our local areas before. We want to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck and can report to you and the federal government exactly how that money's being used. So with that, I will stop, and our entire team is available for any questions you may have.
Okay, Mr. Zucker? Senator Zucker? Can I just say that I, having been involved with so many people calling our office and that kind of thing, that this has been just such a strange couple of years, and how much I admire you for handling it all, and you've taken some really, really tough criticism and some tough people beating up on you, I think, and I just want to say publicly how much I admire you for standing up as well as you have, and doing the right thing, and you just have kept your head down and kept doing the job, and I am really impressed with your performance, so need to have that support every once in a while.
Thank you.
My office still is getting a straggling call or two, but of course, the numbers are way down, and most of the people that do call us are people that still have very complicated cases. A lot of them, I think, need lawyers rather than us, but that's mostly what our calls are now. So, you know, this is one of those things that I just don't believe that anybody was prepared for, because we've never gone through this before, and I think you've done a fabulous job. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so you're going to get off easy this afternoon.
That's a first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next we have MSDE. Do you hope you're going to get off easier? Oh, we do have witnesses. I'm sorry. We do have witnesses this afternoon. Let me do that first. Okay, I have, those are the ones. Okay, let's see. Levy Lundell, Eric Marshall, and Lance Kilpatrick. Good thing you waved your hand. I forget that every time.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, thank you for having us today. For the record, my name is Lance Kilpatrick. I'm the Legislative and Political Director for AFSCME Council 3. I'll be brief because my members here, Levi and Eric, are frontline employees who have been doing a Herculean task of ensuring that the programs and supports and services that DOL provides have remained and continue to move forward despite many obstacles, we would argue some self-created within the institution itself. For example, unfortunately, constantly we hear of the issues with Beacon. And I've reflected upon that, thinking that a beacon is supposed to be a light that guides ships along the coastline to ensure that they don't fall upon the rocks and run aground. And yet it seems like this computer system that has been put in place now for years has done just the opposite and has been more of an obstacle than an assistance to our folks. Yet we have continued to move forward to process as many claims as we possibly can. I've talked to members who have constantly worked from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., taken a break, and then worked until bedtime to process claims that have come forward within the unemployment insurance situation. I've also met directly with motion inspectors and others who are incredibly understaffed given the ongoing growth, thankfully, for Maryland in terms of construction and other things, and yet they are so horribly under-resourced and understaffed. Literally, there's approximately 50 motion inspectors within Maryland right now, which would take 167 years to investigate all the different work sites that are around the state. Obviously, they can't get to everything. Not only are they required to investigate, right, but they also have to do preventative work as well in educating employers and construction on how to do their job properly. I would finalize with DOL, just by definition, is supposed to be, a leader in terms of creating a safe work environment for individuals. And yet, during the pandemic, DOL has actually been one of the laggards in terms of creating telework policy that actually works for employees. Too much and too often, employees have had to be required to come into the office when they could easily do their work remotely through telework. We know the state hasn't fallen apart with other agencies that have put that in. We think it's appropriate and about time that DOL actually instituted those types of telework policies as well. I'd like to turn it over to my members now for more detail. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Pardon me, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Levi Lindell. I live in Tacoma Park, Maryland, and I'm a safety compliance officer. I'm here as a representative of ASME Local 3661 in support of the Maryland Occupational Safety and Health Division of the Department of Labor. Motion inspectors are responsible for representing the state of Maryland worker. We have to navigate complex standards to serve and protect employees by reducing the number of accidents, injuries, and fatalities in the state of Maryland. However, we have seen frightfully poor retention rates. I started at MOSH about 5 years ago, and out of 10 employees I started with, there are only 2 of us left. To bring Maryland to the same standard of other states, we believe in 3 promising solutions. First, we recommend a thorough analysis of our budget for the MOSH organization by supporting parity raises. We believe employees with talent and strong work ethic are moving to other agencies because here they cannot effectively advocate for their own families. Secondly, hybrid work is a valuable tool in recruiting and retaining a high caliber workforce, increasing productivity and enhancing the drive of these employees. However, our agency has been firm on a non-existent telework policy, forgoing proven, cheap, and effective method of retaining employees. Third, promotions are next to impossible. Although we perform management level work daily, we have little or no opportunity for promotion, which has been letting down hardworking achievers in our agency and will repeatedly cost the state talent, time, and resources. Our actions must continue to thrive in order to protect the communities of Maryland. I remember an employee seconds from an accident thanked me saying, "I'm the only one that supports my family. If something happened to me, I have no idea what would happen to them. Lucky we have people like you around." In conclusion, this year marked many challenges for the world and our local Maryland community. We appreciate your concern, and we are confident that our proposed solutions will keep satisfied and achieving employees working for us. This goal should be in perfect alignment with our vision for Maryland, as we all want to protect our employees, who in turn provide protection for the people of Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Marshall. I represent ASME Council 3, Local 3641. I work at the Maryland Department of Labor and Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. My testimony is similar to Levi. I am a combat veteran. I transitioned to the state of Maryland. We know that we didn't expect to get rich, but we didn't want to live paycheck to paycheck as well. We work day in and day out to support Maryland's mission, to give our customers, my customers, veterans with significant barriers to employment, a better life. When I transitioned out of the military, my resume said that I did a lot, but the employer said I didn't do much at all. So I thought that I was overqualified in an underqualified capacity. I pulled myself up, earned advanced degrees and certifications, and I put myself in a position to help other veterans make that same transition. Last summer, my son graduated high school. He started Georgetown University and got his first job. He came home and said, "Dad, you're gonna be proud of me." I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I went out and got a job." And I said, "Where'd you get a job at?" Oh, I took the post office exam and I passed it. Fast forward a month later, he brought home his first paycheck and he said, Dad, my first paycheck, I cleared $2,200. I said, wow, in a bit jealous voice. And I said, you know, you just made more than me for the whole month? And he says, get out of here. I said, yeah. So I understand that we don't get paid a lot. We're all public and civil servants. But with all of the resources that we have, we can do better to support the members and the state employees in the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Senator Zucker.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for that testimony. Maybe, offline, we could follow up with the Secretary on the telecommute policy. I did want to make an observation, though, that as soon as you all sat down, the Secretary and her team came back. So I just noticed, we all noticed that, and I just thought it was meaningful to have the administration come back to hear their employees' words. But maybe we could all follow up offline with the guidance of the chair just to get a sense of what's going on with the telecommute policy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, is Denise Gilmore here?
She is not, Madam Chair.
She's not,
No,
okay.
I'm playing the role of Denise Gilmore today.
Okay, Denise, would you like to say a few words? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, next on our agenda is the Msde Headquarters. Laura Hyde is our budget analyst, and we have Dr. Mohammed Chowdhury here from Msde. Laura Hyde, the budget analyst, will give her analysis, and then we'll have you all up to the table. How's that? Okay, Laura, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I'm Laura Hyde, and I'm the budget analyst for the Maryland State Department of Education. We're starting on page 1 with the operating budget summary. MSDE's fiscal 2023 budget decreases by $101.3 million, or 25%, to $303.2 million. This change reflects a fiscal 2023 general fund decrease of approximately $20 million due to the transfer of Juvenile Services Education Program to the Department of Juvenile Services, a $3.9 million deficiency allocation for the School Resource Officer Grant due to improper reversion of those funds in fiscal '22, and a decrease in federal funds by $77.1 million due to the allocation of COVID-19 federal stimulus funds in fiscal '22. We're going to turn to page 13, which is Exhibit 7. This is SEA ESSER funds by type. In fiscal 2020 and 2021, local education agencies, or LEAs, and MSDE received a combined total of $3.2 billion in federal stimulus funds. Of this amount, $2.9 billion, or 90%, was allocated directly to LEAs according to a set formula, and $302.9 million, or 10%, was designated for the State Education Agency, or SEA funds. Of the $302.9 million in SEA ESSER grants, $137.3 million, or 45%, are mandates for federal or state programs. $150.5 million, or 50%, is available for discretionary programs and purposes, and $15.1 million, or 5%, is allocated to allowable administrative expenses. A detailed list of those grants is in Exhibit 8 on page 14. DLS notes that there's a recommendation that MSD submit a report on these funds and expenditures, and that can be found in the recommended action section at the end of this analysis on page 33. The next 4 exhibits provide detail on the budgets of the independent units covered in this analysis. If you look on page 16, this is Exhibit 9. This is Msd Headquarters Budget. Msd Headquarters receives a total allowance of $273.3 million, the majority of which is allocated to the Division of Rehabilitative Services, Assessment and Accountability and Information Technology, and Information Technology and Projects. If you look on at Exhibit 10, this is the Maryland Longitudinal Data System Center budget. And the System Center receives a total allowance of $2.5 million, which is primarily allocated to personnel, 63%, and contractual services. You look at Exhibit 11 on page 18. This is the Maryland Center for School Safety, which receives a total allowance of $25.4 million, which includes $22.6 million in grants and $2.8 million for administrative purposes, which is shown here. With the majority of MCS's administrative budget going to personnel, 67%, and 22% going to contractual services, which is $609,000. And then in Exhibit 12, which is on page 21, this is the budget for the Office of the Inspector General for Education, which receives a total allowance of $2.1 million, of which 80% or $1.7 million is dedicated to personnel. Now we're going to go to personnel for Msd Headquarters. This is on page 24. Msd Headquarters has 246 vacant positions as of January 2022, with vacancies above turnover at approximately 193 positions. MSDE's vacancy rate is approximately 20%, which exceeds the projected turnover rate by 15%. In fiscal 2023, 176 positions are abolished due to the transfer of juvenile services education to DJS. Vacancy data includes 95 vacant positions indoors, 64 vacant positions in the Office of the State Superintendent, and 43 vacant positions that will be transferred to DJS or abolished at the start of fiscal 2023. MCSS currently has 3 vacant positions, and the OIGE has 1 vacant position. Please turn to page 25, Exhibit 14. This continues the discussion about MSD's personnel vacancies. Since fiscal 2020, MSD has had persistently high numbers of vacancies across the agency and its independent units. This problem appears to have been exacerbated with the COVID-19 hiring freeze during calendar 2020, but has continued after the freeze was lifted in 2021. As of January 2022, MSDE and independent units, including the Interagency Commission for Agency on School Construction, reported 256 vacancies. The agency may also need personnel to implement Blueprint for Maryland's future programs, so filling these vacancies could be important in the future years. This issue has a recommended action for your consideration on page 32, which restricts $100,000 pending a report on these vacancies. Will you please turn to Exhibit 15. It's on page 27. This is virtual school enrollment. During calendar 2020 and 2021, MSDE worked with multiple vendors to offer over 300 online credit-bearing student courses. Participating LEAs manage their own virtual programs and offerings, enrollment, attendance, and special education or alternative education services. In addition to course offerings available through the state, at the start of the 2021-2022 school year, 22 of 24 LEAs offered a virtual learning option with a total enrollment of 25,628, which you can see on this next page. This was approximately 3% of all K-12 students across the state. This issue has a recommended action for your consideration on page 34, which suggests that MSDE submit a report on virtual learning. We're going to look at page 29, Exhibit 16. This is MCAP assessments. Due to COVID-19 school closures starting in March 2020, administration of pilot MCAP assessments was delayed. Spring 2022 assessments will provide MSDE and LEAs with critical information about student progress and learning loss during the pandemic. And it will be the first time that students attending Maryland virtual schools will engage in a full complement of tests, which are shown here in this timetable. In the next exhibit, which is on page 30, you can see that this is the proposed budget for the Division of Assessment and Accountability, which receives $51 million, which is $2.7 million less than fiscal '22 working appropriation, but $13.8 million increase from fiscal 2021. Of this amount, $46.6 million is allocated to assessments. MSDE notes that the agency expects undetermined but increased costs for MCAP assessments heading into fiscal 2024. This issue has a recommended action for consideration on page 35 and suggests that MSDE submit a status report on MCAP. Going to scroll to the recommended actions. Just to point out, there are 2 additional recommended actions for your consideration, in addition to the issues addressed previously. On page 33, there's a recommendation that MSDE continue to submit its closeout report. And on page 35, there's a recommendation that MSDE submit an update on their work with Maryland School for the Deaf to address concerns related to a 2019 audit. The remainder of this analysis provides updates on other programs and funding administered by MSDE and its independent units. This concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Thank you. Great job. Dr. Chowdhury, come on up. We'll let you bring whoever you will fit at the table up here with you. I think the last time I was talking to you, you were expecting a baby.
Yes, and she has arrived. All right.
Your life has changed.
It definitely has changed. It is not mine anymore. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair King, Senator Zucker, Chair Alfred, and Spirit. I appreciate you guys having me here today. This is my first one in person, so
Good.
taking in the room and everything. I have with me Justin Dayhoff. He's my Assistant Superintendent of Financial Planning, Operation, and Strategy. So essentially, he helps me know all the numbers and make sure I'm doing right with the numbers, and also push my thinking to make it work smarter, better, and faster. I have some prepared remarks, so I will begin. So thank you again. I'm grateful to you for your continued commitment to education. Thank you, Ms. Hyde, for your thoughtful analysis. As we begin today, I would like to highlight the pivotal moment we are in. The blueprint for Maryland's future, unprecedented federal relief money, and increased accountability requires the Maryland State Department of Education to do more than for which statute has previously required. As an ambitious vision for the future of Maryland schools spurs a sense of urgency. The MSDE is deeply aware of the moment and its role in shaping the future of P-12 education in Maryland for the state's children and families, and particularly as the department navigates the blueprint implementation amidst an ongoing global pandemic. With that, I will respond to the analysis. The analysis attends to 4 core themes to which I will respond in turn. Putting Maryland's state reserve funds from the ESSER funds into action, implementing the blueprint for Maryland's future and aligning department resources to do so, state assessment data, and related data systems and virtual learning. I understand and concur with the recommendation for a report related to the ESSER funds. To that end, I am also pleased today to provide an update on that work. On February 9th, MSDE announced the launch of a new grant initiative designed to support local education agencies, LEAs, in utilizing federal funds to overcome the learning loss resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic, accelerate student learning to narrow opportunity and achievement gaps, and provide more targeted support for historically underserved students and their communities. The grant initiative, known as Maryland Leads, also supports LEAs in addressing short and long-term challenges related to the current labor shortage and attends to the long-standing need to establish and strengthen teacher pipelines and development. Maryland Leads is a unique grant opportunity that will provide more than $150 million in funding to local education agencies and will seed the transformational change our children need and deserve. From spurring initiatives to transform our neighborhoods through excellent community schools to launching innovative school models to put students on the path to meet the college and career readiness standards set forth by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, Maryland Leads sets districts up to scale evidence-based programs that can drive results, particularly for children who need the most support and those who were most disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Through this initiative, we identify 7 high-leverage strategies. and provide exemplar program models, actionable focus areas, and related research, and the funds and partnership necessary to implement those strategies. Those strategies are grow your own staff, staff support and retention, the science of reading, high-quality school day tutoring, reimagining the use of time, innovative school models, and transforming neighborhoods through excellent community schools. Every school system in Maryland has the opportunity to access funding through this initiative. Those that choose to implement a comprehensive plan aligned to the science of reading, one of our 7 core strategies, or provide rigorous evidence that they're already doing so, can access even a greater amount of funding. We want to ensure school systems have the resources necessary to have all students reading by the end of 3rd grade and to provide the appropriate supports for those students still struggling with reading beyond 3rd grade. Our talent pipelines for teachers and other professional staff have long been unable to meet the demands of school systems across the state. Today, the pandemic has exacerbated the staffing challenges facing our schools and revealed the need to address working conditions and other vital areas that will have long-term implications for talent recruitment and retention. I've looked at the data, and half of Maryland's teachers come to us from out of state. Maryland Leads enable school systems to work with best-in-class partners to design, implement, and scale models to develop talent pipelines, create retention initiatives, and provide greater support for teachers and staff. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed numerous areas to which we must attend. In 2019, only 41% of Maryland's 3rd graders were proficient in reading. That means 59% were not. As a result of the pandemic, the proficiency gap has widened further. I will continue to say that a return to normal is not good enough. Gaps existed then, and they will persist now unless we do something differently. Our schools and staff are not okay. It's going to take bold, evidence-based recovery and acceleration efforts and deep levels of engagement to elevate professions in education and effectively implement the blueprint for Maryland's future to realize and sustain excellent educational outcomes for all students. Maryland Leads provides every school system and its stakeholders the opportunity and inspiration to meet this challenge. Maryland Leads is an exciting endeavor and a testament to the department's efforts to examine its personnel and organizational structure. The analysis addresses the high vacancy rate at Msde, and I agree. In fact, I made it a priority to address vacancies in staff organization at the department. The Msde has been working to maximize existing positional resources by examining existing vacancies and identifying opportunities for reclassification, reorganization, and repurposing of positions. In summer 2021, as soon as I started at Msde, we initiated this work and set out to understand where vacancies exist. We swept existing vacancies and made sure that we understood what we can do with them and make positions available for reclassification and reorganization. The Msde examined vacant positions that were open and unfilled for more than 150 days and got to work. We repurposed positions to create the new executive leadership team, new offices of strategic planning and continuous improvement, a new core operational services team, and a new office of grants administration and compliance. We also expanded the Office of Communications and Community Engagement and our research and assessment, accountability, and performance reporting teams. To be clear, this was done with existing positions at the department, not with new positions. Similarly, within existing constraints, the Msde also worked to remedy remaining vacancies through new talent and recruitment efforts and continue to do so. For example, the new core operational services team includes talent partners that will work hand in hand with program teams to identify staffing needs and coordinate with human resources to target, identify, and recruit new staff. These positions are an essential first step to build the Msde's capacity to fully support the legal requirements specified in the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The Msde respectfully disagrees with the analysis findings related to the positions at the department. With the fiscal year 2023 allowance includes 10 positions. The Msde would respectfully request the general funds not be restricted and that department not be assigned new tasks over and above the additional requirements in the blueprint legislation. Let me be clear about our request to not add new requirements to the MSDE as it works to implement the blueprint. MSD had reductions of positions in 6 of the last 9 years, 72.7 in total. So MSD will use the 10 new positions in fiscal year 2023 to help fix the cracks in the department's foundation and build upon a whole new floor. These new positions will fill essential strategic holes and allow us to reorganize towards efficiency and effectiveness. These positions provide much-needed flexibility to build, and in some cases rebuild, a strong, sustainable, efficient system capable of supporting the implementation of a multi-billion-dollar world-class education reform initiative, one never before undertaken by another state in this country. I'm grateful for these positions, but I ask respectfully that the General Assembly not withhold funding or require a report for these positions. With regard to the analysis, the MSD concurs with the request for a report on the Maryland Comprehensive Assessment Program. I would also like to update the committee on the analysis questions related to remote administration of assessments. MSDE provided remote versions of general assessments in grades 3 through 8, mathematics and English, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, English 10, as well as grades 5, 8, and the High School Maryland Integrated Science Assessment Test and High School Government in the early fall of 2021. Those remote assessments were made available to every LEA, and it was a local decision to allow students to participate in the remote versions. Remote versions of the alternate assessments and the kindergarten readiness assessment were not available as these assessments require in-person one-on-one assistance for administration. MSD will not be continuing remote administrations of its assessments beyond early fall of 2021. The test result data shed light on the amount of ground we need to recover for many children. Local education agency drops in demonstrated readiness for kindergarten based on the KRA between the 2019 and 2020 school year and the 21 and 22 school year range from 23% to 1%. That drop represents a decrease in the percent of kindergartners demonstrating readiness from 47% to 40%. Preliminary English language arts results show overall an average state proficiency of 35%. Pre-pandemic, grade 3 to 8 and English 10 were 43.7% and 42.6% respectively. Preliminary mathematics results show a state proficiency of 15%. Pre-pandemic grade 3 through 8 and Algebra 1 were 33% and 27% respectively. Interestingly, science state results for grade 5 and 8 assessment combined was 39%, which is higher than the pre-pandemic proficiency of 33%. Just as we do with the assessment report, MSD likewise concurs with the analysis's recommendations for the accounting practices report again in 2022. MSD also concurs with requests for updates related to the 2019 MSDE Maryland School for the Deaf audit. The Maryland School for the Deaf is undergoing significant transition and rebuilding its leadership team. And MSDE, under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, has continued to monitor and support the Maryland School for the Deaf in the correction of non-compliance identified through the comprehensive monitoring process. Monitoring specialists completed an audit during the 2018-2019 school year and identified areas of non-compliance for individual children. The specialists have since reviewed and verified that the Maryland School for the Deaf corrected identified violations within 1 year as required by the U.S. Department of Education. MSDE regional liaisons provided customized technical assistance, including the development of high-quality individualized education programs, fidelity of implementation of specially designed instruction, IEP progress monitoring, and data-informed decision-making. In June 2021, the specialists also completed a policy and procedure audit to ensure local policies and procedures are consistent with special education requirements under federal and state law. Through this audit, MSD identified non-compliance and incomplete content, which contributed to the improper training of the Maryland School for the Deaf staff. In April 2022, MSDE will conduct a new comprehensive monitoring of the Maryland School for the Deaf, Audit results will be shared with the Maryland School for the Deaf leadership, and the specialists will support the correction of newly identified areas of noncompliance as needed. MSD will also ensure technical assistance and support as provided to address needs identified through the monitoring process. With regard to the analysis questions related to virtual schooling, MSD concurs with the report's request, and I will provide some updates here today. Given the attention to virtual learning amidst the still ongoing pandemic pursuant to the Joint Committee's report from the 2021 session, and the Maryland State Department of Education was requested to submit a report on virtual learning, including actions taken in calendar years 2020 and 2021 to address remote learning, challenges and remedies for teachers and students. The report included, but not limited to, information pertaining to the Digital Advisory Learning Committee, virtual professional development courses, MSD's learning management system, and future plans. MSD has been monitoring and collecting data from the local school systems on attendance and demographics and has compared the relationship between failure rates, attendance rates, synchronous instruction, timing, and staffing in local school system virtual programs. There are 25,628 students enrolled in the statewide virtual program. And MSD has also compared the fail rates and attendance rates for virtual students compared to all students. Here's what we found so far. More synchronous instructional time for virtual students is associated with lower course failure rate in middle school ELA, science, and social studies. The middle school course failure rate for systems with 100% of their virtual teachers provided by a vendor was significantly higher with systems with no vendor-provided teachers. Fail rates are approximately double or more. In nearly all systems, attendance rates were higher for virtual students at all grade levels by up to 14 percentage points. On average, across all systems and grade levels, the attendance rate for virtual students was 3 percentage points higher than for all students in the same system. ESSER funds have supported and will continue to support costs for state virtual learning opportunities. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 funds will pay for the state learning management system that houses digital resources, student and professional learning online courses, and e-communities at a cost of roughly $370,000. ESSER 1 funds are currently supporting the creation of 7 student courses, 2 educator courses, 6 educator modules at a cost of $4.6 million. And ESSER 2 funding is being used to create an additional 8 student online courses and 3 educator courses at a cost of $3.9 million. These investments are important. Last year, in nearly all systems, course failure rates were higher for virtual students, up by 40 percentage points or higher. On average, across all systems, grade levels, and subjects, the failure rate was 9 percentage points higher for virtual students in the same system. Virtual learning is not the best form of education at scale for the vast majority of our children, but MSDE recognizes that virtual learning is here to stay, so we should seek to refine it and have safeguards in place. I want to end my remarks with a note of thanks to the committee and its members. MSDE stands ready for this moment. Maryland's children and families need us to get this right, and we are fully committed to ensuring the successful implementation of the blueprint. The blueprint, as a once-in-a-generation education reform effort, demands nothing less. I would be remiss if I didn't add that the blueprint has room for refinement, and we should not hesitate to make the necessary changes to ensure our policy conditions can be the best they can be in the years ahead. For example, I believe we need to strengthen our policies and practices for ensuring high-quality reading and instruction across the state. This is currently not happening at scale. And the way we go about recruiting and retaining accomplished educators at low-performing schools and high-poverty schools. The latter is a matter that is very personal to me. As a former student, teacher, and district leader who attended, taught, and worked at highly segregated 90% Title I schools and districts throughout my entire life, this is an area I will have a major focus on. The stakes are too high and the needs are too great to stop where we are, and not use evidence, research, and best practice, as well as feedback from blueprint implementation to be nimble and responsive. Together, I know we can do this. We will strive to ensure Maryland schools provide equitable access to best-in-class educational opportunities for all children and families, regardless of race, class, ability, or background. With that, I am happy to answer any and all questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. You covered a lot.
I haven't been sleeping since the birth.
That's all bad.
So I've trained myself to operate on 30 minutes sleep.
Do we have questions? I have a couple questions if the committee does not so far. My biggest concern, and I don't think you addressed it in your remarks there, but I live in an area where there are a lot of teachers, and I am appalled at how many people are retiring early this year. They are just burnt out. And I think everybody's got their heart in the right place, and I know that we've got work to do with kids that have fallen behind and that kind of thing. But I'm really worried about the teacher workforce. There's got to be something to make that job better for us, because I don't see us attracting more teachers until we get something turned around.
So a few things. On the Maryland Leads Grant Initiative, we offer seven different strategies, right? One deals with staff retention and recruitment that forces school systems to come up with initiatives to improve working conditions. So that's one piece. I have a line I often like to say, I was a really damn good teacher because I was a damn good social worker, but that's not sustainable. So if we want to improve the profession, we need to continue to upgrade how teachers are paid. We need to upgrade how they're prepared, especially if we want a diverse workforce. We need to also stop creating conditions that force them to become social workers, to keep food pantries in their classrooms. That's not their job. They should be focused on instruction. So we should normalize wraparound supports. We should find ways in this country to normalize the child tax credit. We should find ways to normalize health screening. We should find ways to normalize a wide variety of things that enable teachers to reliably refer children to a place where they can get the support and service, hire more social workers, etc. That's a given. The community schools model is great. That is a strategy, right? And we call it transforming neighborhoods with community schools. But where are we as a society where school is the hub where everything needs to be versus giving families access to what they need? So I think we continue to push those things. I said a lot, but I think working conditions matter. I think we want to make sure every school should have a system that is able to refer a child a teacher sees in the classroom to get that need that has nothing to do with instruction. So we can start there, and I will do everything possible to push for those conditions.
Okay. I think one of the things too, and I've seen this even before the pandemic started, it's kind of like a flavor of the month thing, where we come up with a new idea for how we're going to deliver education or how we're going to do things, and they just get into and doing it well, and then we change it,
Yes.
and there was a lot of that, and there still is, as far as the pandemic goes. We would do tell them to do one thing one day, and the next day we would change it, and then the next week we would change it, and I'm really feeling bad for the teachers that I've been talking to, because it has been a really rough 2 years on them. It's rough on the kids, but it's really rough on the teachers too. And even as far as recruiting and getting young people to go into the teaching field, you just have to find some way to make it look a little bit more appealing to them.
Absolutely, I concur. We have an initiative that has existed called Teach Maryland, and it was originally conceived to convince high-performing high school students to jump into the teaching profession. Not many want to jump into it, and wide variety of things: pay, working conditions, what they see, paperwork, the press, and who's blamed for issues when it's not the teacher. So I concur with you. And when it comes to new curricular mandates and stuff, we need to stay focused on the blueprint. We need to stay focused on refining good old-fashioned decades-true teaching that has worked. Now technology helps differentiate faster, and so let's continue to upgrade those skills. But throwing other things or the new flavor or fad is not the right thing to do. And we know that from decades of research. So I'm with you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as a person that's worked on the blueprint for, it seems like half my life, but it wasn't called the blueprint when we first started, but I look at that as a work in progress. I don't look at that as a concrete plan, this is the way it's going to be. I think that is going to evolve with us over the next few years. I think we've got some really good people on the implementation team, and I see us really moving forward with that. But I sure don't see it being stationary at all. I think we'll just roll with the changes.
Yes, I agree with you on that one.
Okay. Senator Alfred?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm so sorry I missed the beginning of this presentation.
okay.
But Mr. Superintendent, it's so nice to meet you in person. I feel like
Yes.
we've Zoomed for quite a long time.
And I'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, yes. You and I have had conversations about perhaps a better role for headquarters, while still respecting local control, to be a convener, to be a source of best practices, even frankly, trying to convince the locals to move in similar directions or to try harder as it comes to, as the chair said, teacher retention, substitute pay, which is only exacerbating
Yep.
a lot of this. My pet peeve is school bus drivers.
Yes.
So I guess just as more philosophical, but I know you're still new. But what is your vision for acting more as a leader amongst the locals?
My vision is, so Maryland Leads is my first go around in putting together a grant initiative. And if you look at it, the way it's designed is you are compelled to jump into doing one of these initiatives that research shows that if you do it well, it will have very strong effects on achievement, staffing, etc. And if you go into this grant initiative, I literally handpicked with my team, right, what it looks like when it's done well. And the way it's set up is you have to participate in informational sessions, you have to participate in strategy sessions with the department. We will support you in drafting out your playbook. We will check in with you to see where it's going. If you're faltering, we will help you refine the plan. Essentially, my vision is an active department that you feel every day. Very, very important. The department has to be a respected entity and harbinger of best practices. It should not be a mystery on how to do something in education. The State Department of Ed has to have those answers. That hasn't been the case, and that's going to change. And it's little things, from changing that horrible website and making that better, to bringing in the best people around me to do this work, and also put a spotlight in our state where amazing things are happening, and invite them to the session so everyone else can learn from them and have healthy pressure. Why are you not doing this? And what do you need? Here, let me help you. So that's my philosophy. I rather get in trouble for engaging too much.
I don't know if you get in trouble from this body at all, but I appreciate your more proactive stance here. I think it's going to be essential, not just to implementing Blueprint, but to really getting us out of the last 2 years that have been challenging for
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Rosapep, you came to visit us this afternoon. Do you have any questions? Wow, okay, all right.
We talk a lot.
Well, we're very fortunate in Montgomery County. We got a new school superintendent that we're very excited about, Dr. Monifa McKnight. And she's anxious to work with you, and
Absolutely.
that will all be a good thing.
That letter came in, and 3 hours later, I said,
Very
it's
good.
done.
Yeah, I think she's just the right person for the right time. She's great.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think we're finished here this afternoon. But thank you very much.
Do you have something else? Thank you.
Okay. And enjoy being a new dad. It goes by really fast.
Yes, I have 2 bosses in the house now.